So let's dive in. So today we're talking about the future of digital advertising. What's coming down the pike, this year, this decade, and what should we as marketers be preparing for, both in terms of the big trends and like the stuff we can do boots on the ground right now and be prepared for it. So I guess to kick things off, Chris, what are some of those big trends in digital advertising that are going to impact the way we do digital advertising this year and even this decade that you're seeing?
So I think the biggest trends affecting digital advertising today, and I think in the foreseeable future, is this idea of giving autonomy to the ad networks. The ad networks for a while, and increasingly more and more, are saying, hey, advertisers, just put a bunch of ads in here, choose as little restrictions as you can, set your bid, and just let us do it. Now, why do they want that? I mean, it gives them more control over their destiny, the ad networks, because they get to choose. They have a lot of latitude to choose to spend. But also, if you look at the way that these ad platforms grow, Google ads, Facebook ads, Amazon, all the other ones, they're building and acquiring new products, right? So a long time ago, Google acquired YouTube. So what that means to Google is they have a whole bunch more ad inventory, but it's in the video format. So, but guess what? It's difficult for advertisers to create video. So they say, hey, just upload a bunch of images and we'll make a little video for you. Our robots will make a little video for you. So it makes sense to the ad platforms because they have all of this different inventory and these different types of ad formats. So they want to say, hey, just give us the raw materials and let us do it. Now, advertisers aren't dumb. They know that giving Google a lot of latitude could have disastrous results. But Google also and Facebook also provide the tools to ping back signals of quality and to ping back signals of revenue, so that in the early days, it was just like, hey, I got 1,000 clicks, I got 10 customers, great, that's about it. Like, keep going along at that rate. But these days, it's like, I got 1,000 clicks, 10 customers, but of those customers, these two were really good. And we now have the ability to ping back data signals from lower down in the funnel, like at the transaction level, to really, really train Google and their incredibly intelligent robots about not just what makes a good lead or not just what makes a good opportunity, but actually what a really good customer looks like. So I think that's the future, is just basically maximum latitude toward these or to these platforms where you are uploading large amounts of different creative, you're choosing relatively large audiences, and you're laying your data pipes and setting your signals up to basically ping back automatically to those platforms so that they know how to separate the wheat from the chaff.
Yeah, Chris, that's really interesting. And I know that we've been talking about that in terms of sort of our new way we approach digital advertising, which is revenue-driven optimization, is what we call it, right? So break that process down for me. Let's start with the funnel math. Like, if I'm a marketer and I'm looking to figure out, like, okay, how do I do my funnel math so I can correctly inform the platforms, like, what my cost per customer looks like and what my ideal customer looks like. How do we start that process? How do we go about doing that?
Yeah. So revenue-driven optimization is the idea of laying these data pipes and sending signals back to the algorithm to give quality indicators. So beyond, hey, this person filled out a form. Okay, great. I've had 100 people that filled out the form. Revenue-driven optimization is about going a level deeper, following those leads throughout the sales process and pinging back ideally on the ultimate outcome, which is revenue. We've made kind of an art and science out of it. So if you look at how we're defining revenue-driven optimization now, not sure if you can see my screen here. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
So the way that we think about revenue-driven optimization is a 3-step process, where the first step in the process is funnel math, and we'll get into that in just a second. Then we've also got data piping, IOIs and IOQs, which we'll talk about. But funnel math, the essence of funnel math is quantifying the revenue value of various behaviors and actions that lead up to the acquisition of a customer. So that may sound, kind of nebulous a little bit, but here's the basic idea. So here's what a lot of funnels look like. You start with a lead, and then say you got 4,000 leads, then you go to marketing qualified, 200 of those, sales qualified, 100 of these, closed deal, 25. Now, you may call these different things, but the idea is the same, is that here is just a raw lead, here it's slightly qualified, here it's very qualified, and here it's actually revenue. So what most advertisers are doing right now in terms of what they're showing to Google, all they're showing them is, hey, we got these leads, but they're not linking back into CRM or their revenue systems. Almost, or most advertisers have CRM or revenue systems, and they'll even do scoring of leads within those revenue systems, but it's not getting back to Google. So the big idea is to tell Google what's working. So instead of what we're doing today, like, hey, Google, we got 4,000 leads. Great, go find more. We're saying, hey, Google, we got 4,000 leads. These 25 became customers. Go find more like them. So next time you have a good quarter or a good month or a good, year or whatever it is, and you're celebrating with your wine on Zoom, just remember, did anyone tell Google?
So Chris, you're saying that I shouldn't optimize my campaigns for lowest cost per lead? Is that what you're implying with this?
Optimizing for lowest cost per lead a lot of times is just a race to the bottom, because they're giving you exactly that, cost per lead. So these platforms have extensive, like unreal amounts of data on people. They know who the buyers are. They know who the buyers are versus the clickers versus the tire kickers. And when you're choking your bids down to be the lowest possible bids, you're basically at the bottom of the barrel, getting the lowest quality leads. Like, we routinely see campaigns where we switch from a cost per lead objective to something lower down funnel. We'll see cost per lead actually go up, sometimes by more than or sometimes by a significant amount. But we'll see cost per opportunity and quality of leads go in the right direction. So generally, optimizing toward cost per lead is not ideal. You have to do it sometimes in a super low traffic environment, or if you just don't have a lot of budget. But ideally, once you hit sufficient volume, you want to switch that optimization objective to something more meaningful lower down the funnel.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So how do I, as a marketer, then start to do that? So I've done my funnel math. I know roughly what my down funnel metrics break out to. How do I then start to post that data back into Google, without getting too technical, back into Google and back into Facebook, to start to get some of these down funnel signals informing how Google goes out and finds customers for me, or Facebook?
Well, let's talk about funnel math real quick and just how to calculate it, like at a basic level. So if you remember, here's our lead to sale journey. There's 4 steps. You may have 5 steps. You may have 3 steps. You may have 12 steps. You may call them something different. But what you want to do is just zoom into the last phase, right? So you just zoom into the closed won deal. If you have actual average deal sizes that you can look at, perfect. Use those. If you don't, use your, just start with essentially your best estimate. So you say, okay, our average deal is worth $3,200. And then you say, all right, well, how many sales qualified leads did it take to, or no, you say, what was the conversion rate of sales qualified leads to closed won deals? And you see, okay, they converted at roughly 25%. So therefore, you multiply your deal value by the conversion rate of the previous step to arrive at an $800 expected value per SQL, which you might consider to be an opportunity in CRM. And you just continue that process. So then you ask, what's the conversion rate from the previous step of marketing qualified lead? And based on that, you derive, and so in this particular example, marketing qualified leads converted to sales qualified at a rate of 50%. So you multiply that value per SQL by 50%, and you've got a $400 value per marketing qualified lead. and you just do the same thing all the way back to the first step. You could even do that. Well, so anyway, so that's the basic example right there. So the first thing that I would do is basically grab a piece of paper, draw out the important steps in your funnel, then start at the very end with that closed won deal value. Ask what was the conversion rate from the prior step to that closed won deal, and apply that conversion percentage to the average deal value.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So, so once we've gone through this process, what are some of the nuts and bolts at a high level of how we actually implement this in platform? Like, what are the 2 or 3 key things we need to do as marketers to actually start to get this data flowing correctly?
Yep. So it's all about the click ID. The secret is in the click ID. So both Google and Facebook and many other platforms will by default append a click ID to the URL of the landing page. And that click ID basically contains all of the information about that individual user and that individual session. So the key is making it so that once that lead or once that record enters into your CRM or enters into your revenue system, that it includes that Google Click ID. So you pass that through with the actual lead submission into your CRM. And then sales is going to receive that and they're going to do something with it. You want to make sure that the Google Click ID stays attached to that record throughout the entire time that they're moving around in your CRM. And then ultimately, once they've closed won or closed lost or whatever, you want to share that same Google Click ID back to Google again with the contextual information about what that individual did. So basically, the easiest way to think about it, or the easiest way to get started, and here's a little slide that shows. So the user clicks on the site, they submit a form, make sure that Google Click ID is stored. Once that sale or the deal is completed, then you upload that back to Google Ads. So the 2 keys are to make sure that the Google Click ID or the Facebook Click ID is passed through to CRM initially, and then stays with that lead. Within Salesforce, by default, once you convert a lead to an opportunity, unless you've solved for that individual field and passing it through, it will be overwritten. So there might be some action required to get it into CRM in the first place, and then a second action required to make sure that it stays persistent with that individual prospect. The second thing you need to do is go into the platform and create new conversions, which are offline conversions, which will be aligned with your sales steps. So became a marketing qualified lead, became a sales qualified lead, became a deal, basically. So you would create those 3 things as conversions, or you might just do 1 or 2 to start. That'd be better than nothing. And then once you upload the list of prospects with the Google Click IDs, you map it to that individual conversion, and you make sure that that conversion has the appropriate values associated with it, so that you can start bidding not on clicks or impressions or even leads, but you start bidding on things like marketing qualified or sales qualified or actual closed won deals. In a perfect world, you want to get to closed won deals, but there's not always enough volume because you need at least 30 conversions a week as a rule of thumb. So if you're not getting that, you basically need to move 1 step up into the funnel continually until you are getting 20 to 30 conversions a week.
Gotcha.
Now, in a super low traffic environment, so like let's say that your budget's only $5,000 a month, and there's no way that you're going to be getting 30 deals, on that level of budget. You can go up pretty high up into the funnel. So for instance, like you could create a conversion. So let's say all things equal, you're getting 100 conversions a month, 100 lead form submissions a month. You could optimize on that lead form submission, But if there wasn't enough volume to do that, you could optimize on something leading up to that. Like you could optimize on dwell time, or activated a field, or made keystrokes on their keyboard. Because for every 100 leads that you get, like you'll probably get 120 or 150 people that kind of started the process of filling out the form. So you can get pretty creative, but the idea is that you want to optimize toward actions and behaviors that have quality baked into the context of the individual session and the individual prospect.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So what, as a marketer then, so assuming I have this data postback set up, I've done my funnel math, I've got the data flowing properly. What else can I do? What are some other levers I can pull to improve both the quantity and quality, in this new process where we're leveraging Google and Facebook's automation?
So one of the biggest mistakes I think that advertisers make is they don't focus enough on creative, right? Because creative, I like to say a lot of times, data and creative are the two eternals. No matter what the platform is, no matter what Google's algorithm is doing, whatever it is, data and creative have always been quintessential to advertising. Even since the beginning of time, since the beginning of advertisers, there's people that have been good at putting persuasive ads together. And there's always been some form of measurement. Even in the early days of direct mail and stuff, you would measure the number of responses, even if you were just doing it analog. So data and creative are the two eternals. What we've talked about so far in terms of revenue-driven optimization is the data play for 2023 and beyond. Like that is the play, is mapping conversions in platform back to actual real life revenue scenarios. The creative play, there's a lot of different ways that you can slice and dice your creative strategy. What we like to do is something called IOIs and IOQs, indicators of intent and indicators of quality. And the big idea here is that what we're talking about are ads and post-click experiences or landing pages that generate useful data signals that you can use to qualify or disqualify potential visits. So poll ads are a good example. Poll ads are such where, hey, where's your next adventure, Italy or Iceland, if you can see this. So if you're in the travel business, these are probably two different personas, kind of, Eastern or Western Europe versus more Eastern Europe, and so you could run an ad like this, you'll get conversions, you'll get lead form submissions or what have you, but you'll also get really useful data to build audiences. So everybody that clicks Italy, whether they convert on that session or not, they're primed for your next Italian offer, right? Similarly here. So here's an example. Usually with IOIs and IOQs, you're getting people to click, you're getting them to type, you're getting them to engage with an ad or with a landing page before they're actually converting. Because a big mistake that a lot of advertisers make is they drive cold traffic right to squeeze pages that are like, give me your name, give me your email, give me this, give me that. And the conversion rates are usually pretty low. On the flip side, if instead of just asking for that PII, that personal info right off the bat, you're basically asking them a question or you're engaging them in some relevant dialogue around whatever it is that your business is, and then you're processing and using that data strategically, is the essence of IOIs and IOQs. So here's another example. Request your customized solar estimate. So we ran a test basically between your standard landing page and this. And as you might guess, the standard landing page had a bounce rate of like 90%, whereas this bounce rate was like 25%. Like almost everybody answered these questions. And then we know from the client's perspective that if they're not a property owner, then they're not a good prospect. So take whatever questions your salespeople would ask on that first sales call and basically put them on your landing page. That's a really easy way to think about it. but don't lead with, like, your salespeople in real life may first ask, okay, what company are you with? What's your name? What's your email in case we get disconnected, whatever. Do on the web though, do that as the last step. Here's another example in the debt consolidation space. So this particular client, can only work with folks that have a certain level of debt. So they spend a ton on ads, they're getting a ton of conversions, but we're only firing a signal back to Facebook or to Google if they make a certain selection via this debt slider or via this slider right here. So if it's less than $20,000, then it literally doesn't even fire a conversion in platform.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Please.
Chris, just taking you back right from the beginning when you're saying the advertisers they want autonomy and latitude and give us your raw material and we'll figure it out. How far does that really go? I mean, are they almost telling the client, we know what's good for you?
Well, they're telling the client basically that if you're making a lot of selections, so when you go to set up a Google search campaign, say that you wanted to show up for, dental equipment suppliers near me. So if you go to set that up in platform, Google will say, but wait, we could run the same campaign on our partner sites on the display network, and you'll get more impressions and more clicks for the same budget. Like that happens around every corner in the platform. And in some cases, they're right, because when your clicks from a search campaign might be $3 or $5 or $7, whereas on the display network, your clicks might be 50 cents or $1. So they're right that you will get more impressions and more clicks. But what they fail to say is that, they're probably not going to convert into customers at the same rate. And that's why it's incredibly important to have the CRM level metrics pushing back in, because it would be impossible to tell otherwise, like whether the display spend is useful or not.
Yeah.
So you can say, okay, Google, let's activate the display network. And then you can watch to see basically because it'll generate leads, like you'll get leads from it. But if that's the only metric that you're seeing, it may look like it's doing well, where in reality it's not.
Okay. Thank you.
But yeah, it's not necessarily the agencies that are telling clients like, hey, upload all of your assets and let us do it. It's the ad networks themselves, Google and Facebook.
Yeah. Jared, can I ask another question?
Absolutely.
I don't know how many questions you want to ask, but this one to me is not specifically related to today, but I'd like to get Chris's view on it. I've been working on a project for about 2.5, 3 years. And what I realized is whether it's a branding company, an advertiser, a web developer, a social media poster, whatever, I have not seen one single website that talks about personal brands. It seems that the whole industry is totally and entirely focused on small businesses, products, and corporations, people that have a budget. So the sense that I get is there's possibly a stigma on tradespeople, which I'm trying to reach. This is my thing. So my question is, why, in your opinion, is this market segment totally ignored, as based on what I saw?
I don't know the answer to that. I have seen, I do know some firms and some individuals that really focus on personal brand building. So I don't think it's necessarily totally ignored, but yes, it is very unsaturated compared to web design, web development, SEO, pay-per-click. So I think it's a good market opportunity in general. But
Yeah.
I don't know why it's ignored. It might be because it's a lot of work, you know? Because like you could tell me you sell dental supplies, and I could spin up a Google Ads campaign for you
Yeah.
with a landing page and with ads and stuff. But to make you famous would be a lot more work than that, and maybe there's just like maybe there's a mismatch in like how much work it is versus how much people are willing to pay.
Well, and I've heard that comment many a times. It says, Murray, for the same amount of work, I'd rather get $80,000 than $80.
Right, right.
And
Yeah.
I just happen to think that it's not that much more work. And with your permission, Chris, I would like to send you just one document and get your opinion on it. I've got your email already. So
Okay.
the document is called Trades Matter.
Trades matter. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah,
Sorry
send it
for
on over.
the interruption, Jared. Back to you.
Yeah, no worries. And I think you raise an interesting point. A lot of the personal branding experts that I see are usually working in B2B circles where there's already the expectation that a sale is going to take a long time and there's a sales cycle. When you're dealing with the trades, there's often an expectation of short-term return, right? Those industries tend to be very lead gen focused. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but that they're generally conditioned to like, hey, I put $1 in, I get X number of dollars back, right? Whereas personal branding, as we know, has a much longer payback period, but can be much higher in terms of the ROI over time.
Great
So,
comment.
yep. So, yeah.
We had our house painted last spring, and the guy Jake looks at me and says, "Did you find me on my website?" I said, "No, I found you in the classified ads." And he goes on to say, "This guy's charging me $800 a month to stay in the top 3." And the poor guy had no idea what he was getting for his money. He was always, well, that's the impression I got. He was always, cash negative and so on, and throwing money everywhere, having no idea whatsoever whether he was winning or losing or generating qualified leads.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an epidemic. And if you're not, look, if you're not an expert in digital
Yeah.
marketing, you're just a business owners trying to run a business. And
You're breaking up a little bit there, Jared.
I'm losing
they're in a
you.
tough position to be able to evaluate what. Can you guys still hear me?
Yep, that's better.
Okay. On that topic, Murray, I think you actually brought up a really nice transition into this topic of, where should we invest dollars, right? So Chris, we've talked about Google and Facebook and kind of the macro changes that are happening and the movement to automation. But what other platforms as we head into 2022, 2023 should marketers be taking a look at? Like what new advertising networks are up and coming that we should be considering?
I mean, the way that I think of it is basically all the world is a traffic store. So I like looking for the opportunities that nobody else is really paying attention to right now. I think YouTube is a massive arbitrage opportunity. It's like super cheap, super scalable, massive amount of volume, deep targeting capabilities, like YouTube 2022, 2023 all day. TikTok is also very, very cheap. It's a different ball game in terms of the ads and the creatives that work, but TikTok is super cheap depending on your niche, depending on your audience. Snap we've seen work in some cases, but if you're an enterprise B2B, of course not. But I like looking at the things that others aren't looking at, and that includes also new formats, new ad formats. Like on LinkedIn, we have these messenger ad campaigns that are doing well. Same on Facebook, messenger ad campaigns are cheap. And if you have a scenario where basically you have trouble getting people onto the phone, Messenger ads can be great because boom, right there, you're in a live chat with them on Facebook. So I like to look at the new formats. Messenger itself, Facebook Messenger itself, I'm yet to see any ads on it, but it is an option. So they're beginning to monetize that platform, and so those are cheap. In general, you're going to get cheap CPMs there. So I like to look at new platforms as they come out, but I really also like to look at new formats within the platforms. Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking.
Gotcha. Yeah, so YouTube's an opportunity. Sounds like TikTok could be some opportunity. I know this wasn't on our list, but are there any new technologies in the ad space that we should be looking at that might help augment our campaigns or otherwise help us understand better like what's working and what's not? Does anything come to mind there?
I mean, I know that we use Optimizer. I know that we use Funnel, to pull data from various sources in. We use, I know, some creative testing, because like when you're spending a lot of money, especially on Facebook or on social, you just need a lot of ads. Like some of our larger accounts, like they have hundreds and hundreds of ads in them. Granted, many of them are like slight variations of the other, like for a different format. But it can be quite hairy knowing or being able to see with statistical significance which ads are working. I can't recall the name of the tool that we're using for that, but we could probably get it.
Yeah.
Can I jump in also, Jared, for another
Yeah,
question?
absolutely.
So, Chris, when you were talking about data and creative being the eternals, is your general feeling that the advertisers are not bringing enough creative talent to the process, or?
I think that a lot of advertisers just don't think about it enough. Like they don't put enough, either thought or resources into it. It's like there's a tendency to spend a lot of time sort of on the media planning side and on the who are we targeting and what. And then the ad in some cases is more so of an afterthought. But in my experience, like you can eke out incremental gains with good targeting, with good tracking, with some of the day-to-day management activities. But there's nothing that really lights an account up like a really fire ad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Chris, do you have any? Oh, I have a question?
Yeah, please.
Chris or Jared, do you have any insights on using advertising on Reddit? Reddit has a culture of not, engage with advertisements, but I still see advertisements when I'm on Reddit. So I'm sure there's some method to the madness. So I just wanted to kind of see if you all had any insights or have utilized advertisements on Reddit and anything like that.
I haven't personally done a ton on Reddit. I know that some clients are on Reddit and are having success.
Mm-hmm.
I think it really depends on the brand, because the Reddit crowd is very, very smart, leans towards sarcastic and like will, call you out or light you up.
Yeah, they can sniff an ad, like
yeah,
they can smell it like a mile away. So it's
yeah. So I think an idea, I think if done tastefully and if done in a way where it's like a value adding type of an ad, I think it could work. It's super cheap though. I know it's cheap, and I know it's fairly not new, but I know that it's probably not as complex as Google ads or Facebook ads. So I would say try it out. Just $50 or $100, try it out.
Yeah.
I really like Twitter. We're starting to get more and more into Twitter ourselves because they are building out their ad platform quickly, but they have this this targeting type where you can target followers of an individual and lookalikes of that follower. So like if there's a big influencer in your space that your entire audience for the most part is following, you can basically target the followers of that influencer And Twitter's still cheap too. You know, compared to Facebook these days, everything is cheap.
Thank you.
That's a great point. Yeah, just my 2 cents I would add is that, what I've seen, at least get engagement on Reddit, is basically what Chris was saying, ads that are very self-aware, right? Ads that are not necessarily saying, hey, this is an ad, but there's a sense like, hey, we know we're advertising on Reddit, and they're kind of speaking to even some of the memes that are on Reddit. And just kind of I think it goes back to the idea of being native to the platform, right? Just like with TikTok, if you try to run Facebook ads on TikTok, it's not going to work. You have to create ads that are native and feel like they're organic to the actual social media network that you're running them on. So I think if you can get in that mindset, whether it's Reddit or whatever platform, saying, hey, how do I create something that feels natural to this platform, that feels like an integrated part of the feed and not just an ad that stands out from the rest, then I think that mindset can serve you well as you're looking to say, how do I crack the code on this particular network?
Thank you.
Can I ask another question to Chris?
Sure.
Yes.
You're still breaking out, Jared.
Uh-oh.
Chris,
Yes, sir.
would you agree with the general observation that most sites, most ads are totally passive, static, look how beautiful we are, come to us, as opposed to proactive, energetic, pull and push sell? They only, what I've seen, they only exhibit pull sell. They create the ad, they go on all multiple platforms and they wait. As opposed to, I don't know, just maybe just have a registration process, if you will. If you want to attract people, you chase them down, they become qualified leads once you corner them and you promote the service that you want to offer. But so my question, sorry, do you feel that it's too much static as opposed to proactive generally?
When you say static, do you mean something that doesn't move? Like, do you mean an ad that isn't animated?
No, I mean, you create something, you put it there, and you wait for people to come to you. That's what I mean by static, as opposed to go and get them.
Well, I think ads by nature, there's no way to call, or there's no way to proactively reach out, say, to the people that see your ad or click on your ad. You can absolutely reach out to the people that fill out your forms.
Yes.
But what I do see is that a lot of ads are just boring. They're just boring, and they're easy to ignore, because you got to remember, if you're, no matter where you're advertising, you're competing with other compelling things, especially on social. You're competing with birthdays and anniversaries and cute cats. If your ad doesn't have stopping power, if it doesn't pass the so what test, if it's easy to ignore, you're dead in the water.
That's right.
The good news is you can see quickly. I mean, you get data back almost instantly when you run an ad. And so if you're used to seeing, X amount of engagement per 1,000 impressions or Y click-through rate, you can see pretty quickly whether a new ad is doing well or not. So I think the proactivity in advertising, if you want to relate it back to sort of a direct sales, go out and get them, would be just really watching those ads closely, and don't let thousands and thousands of impressions go by at a subpar click rate or subpar conversion rate. Kill that ad and replace it with an ad that's better.
So the great ad is depending on the number of clicks that you get, it's all in the results. The customer does not, I tend to agree with you that most of the ads are boring, but how do you know that an ad is a great ad? By the results?
Well, the first signal that you'll get is click-through rate.
Yeah.
And advertise, the networks, Google, Facebook, TikTok, Reddit, whatever, they're always going to incentivize and reward advertisers for creating ads that people engage with
Okay.
versus ads that people ignore.
Yeah.
So if you're so the first signal that you get back is, are people engaging with this?
Yeah.
Somebody's going to engage with it. Like your click-through rate's not going to be 0%, but like if it's less than 1%, then there's probably some room for improvement.
Okay.
But then what you want to look at, like what we were talking about earlier with the revenue-driven optimization, with the funnel math, with the back-end metrics, you have to, the key is to get those metrics, which are the revenue metrics, which are the important metrics, showing in Facebook, within the platform, so that you can look at all your ads, you can see how many impressions they've had, how many clicks they've had, how many leads they've gotten, how many of those leads turned into a deal, or even how many of those deals closed and for what values. Like that's the holy land, because then you can say, hey, this ad gets great engagement and it's bringing us customers. Like that's a winner.
Yeah.
So it's fun. It's a really exciting time to be alive and to be a digital marketer. I think you're muted there, Sharon. I don't know if you're trying to say something.
Oh no, I was just, that's for sure. It is a interesting time to be alive.
Yeah, I mean, just think like, so in terms of your side hustle, Ashara, like in terms of baking, right? First thing I would say is like baking's pretty broad. If you can choose a niche within that, it would be, probably easier. Like if it's like gluten-free baking, or if it's like baking with kids, like easy baking with kids, or, baking, stuff for weddings, like some kind of like
Baking for your
niche.
coworkers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Baking for Catherine, that's a niche. Specifically for
But the arbitrage opportunity, and by arbitrage, I just mean like getting value for free, is immense, because YouTube is a massive search engine. Like YouTube gets more daily search queries than Yahoo and Bing combined. So it's effectively a search engine. So you could right now create a 1-minute video about baking, post it on YouTube, and like you will get views. You might not get 1 million, but you'll probably get 100 in a month.
Yeah.
And the next month you'll probably get 100 more and 100 more and 100 more. So you can get that traffic for free.
Yeah.
That's still the case. Like that, and that's what drew me into internet marketing to begin with. I set up a site, I wrote some articles, didn't even have Google Analytics back in those days, but we had server logs. And after writing 5 or 7 articles, I checked and it was like, I got 72 visitors. What the heck? Like people are coming from Australia to read this stuff? Like, oh my goodness. And that was, 2005. And that was when the thing clicked. It was like, oh my goodness, we can get traffic for free. We can monetize that traffic. We can build databases. We can create products. We can market to them. That was the Aladdin moment for me, like a whole new world kind of thing, and usually arbitrage opportunities, like it's not the glory days of 2005 anymore with just like super easy free traffic galore, but there is still absolutely arbitrage opportunities like YouTube, free traffic for days, even Google search still. Like if you have a niche and you're creating good content, like you'll get rewarded with free traffic.
Yeah, and I guess for me, it's just like narrowing down what it is, because I feel like I'm a creative person. So my thing is narrowing down what that thing is, because it could be baking, it could be cooking, it could be DIY beauty, it could be spa stuff. Like it's just, there's a lot of things that I'm interested in. And I guess it's just figuring out that thing and like picking one and like staying in the lane and kind of, researching and digging really deep into it. And then using the marketing skills that I've learned to kind of, help with that, and also help others, because I know a lot of small business owners as well. So it's all trying to like fit it all together. So like I said, I'm just practicing for now. And
That's all good.
if it turns into something, we'll see.
Chris? Today, based on your experience, if you had to pick 5 social media platforms based on effectiveness, traffic, and so on, from your experience, what would they be?
So it all depends on your business, but I wouldn't choose 5. I would like drill deep into 1 or 2 because
Oh,
5 is, yeah, 5 is too many, I think.
okay.
I think you could do well on any of them, really. I personally like LinkedIn. Like, I think if you're a B2B, LinkedIn is, a pretty obvious choice because the traffic quality is huge. It's still, yeah, I mean, like I'll post on LinkedIn once a week or something, and my posts get more views in a month by a multiple of probably 2 or 3 than our website gets. And our whole website that has hundreds of pages, it gets maybe 10,000. My views on, or my things on LinkedIn get like 25, 30,000.
Got it.
But I think that there is, yeah. So I would say drill into 1 or 2. If you're B2B, definitely LinkedIn. Twitter, I think, has a place for you if you're B2B or B2C. So I think if B2B, LinkedIn, Twitter. If B2C, depending on your niche, you might just go Facebook, or yeah, it depends on the audience you want to reach. So for younger demographics, you would want to go TikTok, Insta, but for older demographics, you would go Facebook.